Hello, and welcome back to the Rawkode Academy. I'm your host, David Flanagan, also known across the internet as Rawkode. Today is another episode of Rawkode Live, where we take a look at open source software within the cloud native DevOps cloud world and try to help you solve some challenges with interesting software. Today is no exception. We're tackling the wonderful world of secrets and secret operations and secrets management. And today we're taking a look at a project called Infisical. And I'm joined by Vlad from the Infisical team to walk us through it. Hey, Vlad, how are you?
Hey, doing great. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. This is always the highlight of my day, but I get to take a look at some awesome open source software. So before we talk about Infisical, could you please take a moment to introduce yourself and tell everyone about you?
Yeah, of course. My name is Vlad. Thanks so much for having me. My name is Vlad. I'm one of the co-founders of Infisical, one of the first maintainers as well of the open source project. Previously I worked at Bunk, which is now one of the largest neobanks in Europe. Also worked at Figma. I think a lot of developers probably know Figma. It's a very popular design tool. And now I'm building in physical. I guess I'll answer more
Awesome.
questions about it. Yeah.
Yeah, we can get into that definitely. Yeah, that's a good lineage you've got. Figma, I think you're right. Everybody's heard of it. What's
Yeah.
interesting is I like WebAssembly a lot, and I always go into conferences and talk about it. And I'm like, "Who's used WebAssembly?" And nobody ever puts their hands up. And I'm like, "Well, you're just using it. You don't know." Like, and Figma is always the
Yeah.
example I give. It's like their platform is made possible, I believe, through a lot of WebAssembly. Anyway, I digress.
It is. And Figma was one of the first users and like proponents of it ever. So yeah.
Yeah, amazing what you can do with web technologies. So
Yeah.
let's take a look at your current or let's talk about your new project in Physical. First, you're a brave person tackling secrets, right? I mean, that to me is a scary thing. I would never in my right mind think I'm going to sit down and make the world secure by providing a secrets management platform. So maybe you could give us a bit of history of why you decided to tackle this problem.
It is well. First of all, yes, it's a scary problem, but also it is one of the biggest problems that developers and companies and different engineering organizations and teams face. And it's one of those problems that they kind of like. First of all, there is no perfect solution for it yet, and because all the solutions that are available have certain kind of limitations. And developers are also not really willing to build a solution in house just because of how high the stakes are for it, and which is why we decided to build in physical, which is a single platform, open source. That you're able to use for managing your application and infrastructure credentials across all of your infrastructure, across your engineering teams, with your teammates, and so on.
Awesome. This is a space, if I go back 5 years, was predominantly either crazy enterprise call as pricing, right? Tools, I think CyberArk was probably one of the bigger ones, or Vault, which is open source but is notoriously difficult to operate. And trust me, I've tried many times, and I'm sure you maybe have in the past as well. It's very difficult, and physical seems to come at that from a different point of view. It's not scary. It doesn't seem challenging to operate. I guess that's something that you set out from the start to be like, let's make this different. Is that a fair assumption?
It is, and how we view, so something that I also say is how we view in physical is we try to center it around the trend of security shift left, and this is ultimately a trend where in the early days predominantly security was the responsibility of a single team within the organization, which is basically the security team. But right now, what's happening is that you see companies like Mercedes or Uber or AstraZeneca, they are using secret managers and like some of those companies that you mentioned, and yet their secrets are still leaked. So they're kind of like not protected against those kind of disasters. And obviously for them it's very high stakes. For AstraZeneca, they have lots of medical data and so on. Um, and so what's happening is that developers are kind of like kept outside the loop, and they don't have the right tools to actually act responsibly and code securely and follow these secure practices. And so this is what we provide within Physical. And our goal and kind of like our thinking about it is that you can build the most secure tool ever, could be Vault, but if it's so hard to operate, developers are just not going to use it and they're going to find ways around it. Um, so ultimately, it's not reaching its goal. And this is what we want to solve within Physical. We want to provide a very simple solution, and we want to provide all these kind of like leftmost tools for developers to operate secrets. Whether it's CLI or secret scanning products that we provide, or some other secret sharing features. You should be able to do it within Physical in just one platform.
Yeah, I resonate with what you just did there a lot. I'm in the Kubernetes space. I've been there for a while, and we Vault was never part of anyone's Kubernetes cluster. It might be now, but it wasn't for the last 7 years. And instead, we came up with these workaround solutions to the point we have tools like SOPs from Mozilla, where we
Yeah.
actually just encrypt everything and store it in Git. And then key
Yeah.
management becomes a challenge after that. And our secrets become very static, right? We can't work with them with SDKs. Like one of the coolest features about Infisical, as we'll get to, is we can do really cool things with our secret properties. So yeah,
Yeah.
storing things in Git encrypted, it never resonated with me. I hated it. And I think that's just because Vault was notoriously difficult and people didn't want to take that burden on. So yeah, I'm hoping people will be excited with what they're going to see about Infisical. But before
Yeah.
we jump into the demo, why don't you tell us about the name? Where did that come from?
Oh, well, the name actually doesn't mean much. What it means is it means kind of like infinite and physical. So it's in physical, or beyond physical.
Okay.
We are operating a lot of these credentials and everything. And yeah, but that's it's kind of like a combination of engineering and DevOps and these kinds of things.
Yeah.
It was also, I must say, it was available in a .com domain, and we wanted the .com domain.
Always a big part of starting a company, right? Is what .com
Yeah.
can you get? Yeah, your Infinity logo works with the name, and of course the DevOps cycle loop is also that kind of Infinity thing. So I guess there's a lot of if you want to make up a really compelling story, it's definitely waiting there for you. Uh,
Yeah.
all right, shall we get hands on and show people how they can get started and what Infisical is? You happy for that?
Yeah. Perfect.
All
Let
right.
me just share, a kind of like a sample in physical project.
Mhm.
Yeah. Are you able to see my screen? So it's a very,
We
very
can
common.
indeed. Yeah, it's live. Go
Yeah.
for it.
Perfect. So I created a Rawkode organization here, and right now we're in the project called server, just for folks to understand. Um, and so ultimately, when you are in the Infisical project, the first difference that you see from traditional secret management solutions is that we have this concept of environments. So in this case, you see that in this project we have development, staging, and three different production environments, such as Prod Asia, Prod US, and Prod EU. And these are highly customizable. We see a lot of engineering teams have, for example, like a pre-prod environments or multiple staging environments, or some teams have different development environments for features they are developing, and so on. So yeah, this environment concept is very common across like how engineering teams organize their secrets and their applications. And this screen gives you a bird's eye view of everything that's happening. You can immediately know if a secret is missing in a particular environment, or if the secret is there but the value is not specified yet. You can immediately see it on the screen.
Nice.
Yeah.
What are the red
Uh,
squares at the top for Asia and EU?
Oh, oh, these are just telling you, you're missing two secrets compared to other environments.
All right.
So
Okay.
if you see we're missing email, SMTP, we're missing Stripe publishable key. So then it just tells you, hey, like, be careful. There's like two secrets missing.
All right. Nice.
Yeah, because ultimately, like, why this view exists is because we've seen times and times, when developers are deploying something and then they accidentally forgot to specify a certain environment variable or secret or configuration. Um, and then they're trying to figure out why their deployments don't work. And this feature makes these things much, much easier.
Yeah, that's one of the things I've noticed from exploring in Physical and going through the documentation. It's not you're not just encouraging people just to put the secret material in it. You're like, just get rid of your env file, just put everything into Infisical, and then you have this level of visibility of what's missing and what's not, and so forth. And I like that approach.
Yes, it could be anything. So now, if we go into any particular environment, so we can go. So what you see here is a set of key value pairs, but the value itself can be anything. It could be a multi-line secret, for example, like a JSON file. It could be an SSH certificate, and in physical, kind of like automatically parse it for you in the right format. But it could also be a configuration. Yeah, it's really anything that that differentiates your environment. Yeah, across different environments.
Nice.
Yeah. And so now you can see we're in the development environment. And here it's kind of like a deeper view into any particular environment. There is a lot of features that are embedded into it. So, for example, if you take the DB URL, you can see that the value is a MongoDB access token. And the cool thing about it is that it's actually able to reference other secrets. So in this case, you can see that we are referencing database password and database username. So every time we update database password and database username, it will actually be propagated to all the other mentions of this particular secret. And right now, we are querying it from this particular environment. We could also query it from reference it from other environments. So in this case, we're doing it from staging. Yeah, it's really up to you on how you want to set it up.
Yeah, yeah, I like
And
that.
yeah, and this feature, a lot of engineers using us, they like it a lot because ultimately, it automates a lot of things. It allows them to just update the secret once, and the values will be propagated everywhere it's being used. So it becomes very convenient. Yeah, and there's lots of other things. So, for example, you can add tags to your secrets. If you have hundreds or we have some teams have thousands or tens of thousands of secrets, then this becomes very convenient because they can just filter or search for those later on. You can also add comments to your secrets. So, if you're onboarding new people to your team, or you just want to remember how to generate a certain encryption key, then you can just specify it here. You can think of it as metadata fields, and you will always kind of like have it nearby.
Cool.
Yeah. And let's see what else. Another thing that people like a lot is this feature called overrides. So by default, all these secrets are shared across users or machines that have access to a particular environment. But with the override feature, for example, let's say I'm a developer and I'm working on a new feature. There is a certain, for example, I update my SendGrid ID to another value. Now I can just click this button and it's going to override it with my personal value without affecting the workflows for the rest of the team. And so this is useful for either, like local development when you constantly have to update these values to try out new things. Or this is also useful for highly sensitive things like database password and database username. They will likely be unique for every engineer. So then you can just override them with your personal values.
I guess, yeah, if you're like a platform team, you could provide the key with an empty value, and then everyone has to go in and provide their override.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, what we see people do is either provide it with an empty value, or, for example, in this case, you see the value is just username, and then I have to go ahead and change it with Vlad. There is also a comment that says override. So you like people kind of know that they have to override it.
Yeah, slick.
Yeah. And yeah, let's see. Everything is obviously version controlled, so you're able to see how the secret value has been changing over time. Um, and this also ties into the point in time recovery functionality. So you can, every time you make a change with your secrets in any particular environment, you can always go back in time and just roll back with a single button. Yeah, here you can inspect the changes, and this is very useful if you make an error or you just want to see what has happened in this particular snapshot for debugging purposes, for example.
Okay, cool. I guess it also gives you visibility into like if someone on the team, their machine was compromised and someone updated values, then you would have
Yeah,
full visibility into how to handle that.
yeah. So this one is actually even more than that. You should look into audit logs, because Infisical automatically logs all of these different events, and you can filter it by source. So like, is it happening through the SDKs or web or CLI, whatever it is. And here it says, like, who is the actor, whether it's user or machine, which user, for example, or which machine, what's the source. For example, right now we're looking at a web, and this is my IPv6 address. And here, like, some metadata fields that are specific to every event. So yes, here you would be able to see, like, everything that could be happening
Oh,
with
so if
your.
someone's machine was compromised, you could literally come into here, filter by the user, and get every read from a certain point of time, and then you know to have to go and rotate all of those credentials.
Yes, exactly. So you're able to rotate, either manually or we have automatic rotation. Yeah,
Very
so
cool.
you're able to see it all here. You're also able to integrate it with your logging solution. If you're using like a SIEM or something, then yes, this would be very helpful for these kind of like compliance use cases. Yeah. Um, yeah. Let's see. So while we're still at it, so something that I'll also say is, by default, the structure of secrets and physical is very flat, and this is because when we see engineers start using Infisical, this is kind of like what they want, because they don't need all this complexity that traditionally been with like different paths and so on in secret management. But sometimes, when teams become larger, and their projects and products become larger, then they start to have the need for folders, and this is basically the functionality of organizing secrets in the particular directories. You can nest these folders infinitely. So really, you're able to create the structure that works for your use case. It's very, very highly customizable.
Is there, from your experience, a preferred approach to how to use folders or go flat? Do you see something that works better, or is it purely down to the team and what they're doing?
It's really down to the team. It also really depends. For example, some teams are changing to Infisical from existing secret managers. So they've already been using something before. So then they're trying to imitate the structure from those secret managers into Infisical. So yeah, and then they're very easily able to do that with folders. But really, like, one thing that we see is, for example, split by microservices, or kind of like split by functionalities. For example, like billing or email, or some people also put kind of like more sensitive secrets into a specific folder, and then they are able to access control this folder much easier. For example, there could be a folder with encryption keys, and kind of like very few people on the team would get access to that.
Okay, so folders can also be a means of splitting up the RBAC across the project.
They
If it's
could.
flat, everybody has access to everything. But if you bring in folders, you can change the policies across the folders. If I understood that correctly.
Yeah, yes, definitely. And I can also show you how it works in a few minutes. But yes, the RBAC access controls, you're able to integrate them very well with folders.
All right, nice.
Yeah. And yeah, so actually, access control is a huge part, obviously, of Infisical, just because of the nature of secret management. Um, but before we move on to that, I want to show you another feature that people are usually very excited about. So here you can see that we're in the Prod Asia environment. And here we have this green icon that says Prod US. And what this means is actually an import icon. So what's happening is that we actually, inside our Prod Asia environment, we are inheriting the secrets from the prod.us environment. So prod.us becomes our core production environment, and then the rest of the secrets is actually being overridden. So they are unique for prod Asia. Some secrets will be equivalent, like the same across two environments. Some secrets will be different, and this is what you can see here.
Okay.
Yeah, there are a lot of other use cases for it. Sometimes it's with some kind of preview environments or staging environments or pre-prod environments. Kind of like having this core environment could be very handy.
So what takes precedence here? The imports or the secrets below it?
The secrets afterwards.
Right.
So
Okay.
you can kind of see here, if it's present in the dashboard, it means that the secret is being overridden by specific Asian secrets.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, I like that. I don't think I really fully comprehended how that worked, but I have used imports. I have microservices, and I realized that I was copying the same three tokens all the time in all of them, and then I end up just creating a folder at the top and then importing it into each microservice. And it worked really
Yeah,
well, but yeah.
Yeah, this is what people do as well. Because, so for example, some people might have a folder with, for example, email, like SendGrid related secrets. And then they need to import the same folder into all of their environments. So they're able to take this folder from, let's say, in the core environment, they have it in physical and import it everywhere else. So then, if they need to update the secret, they only update it once and it gets propagated everywhere.
All right, nice. I like that.
Yeah. Let's see. So we can probably move on to the access controls. So in physical, how you can think about it is we have the concept of identities. And these identities could either be humans or machines. So for example, humans, it's any developer, any DevOps engineer who has access to the Infisical dashboard, or also API or CLI or all the other formats that we provide for accessing secrets. But identities could also be machines. And so machine identities are useful for example, managing CI/CD pipelines or your production environments, or something more automated. So you basically, how you can think of it is people are kind of like more manual workflows, and machines are much more automated workflows. But the nice part about it is that they're kind of equivalent, and both of them have the role that can be assigned to it. And then this role gives them the corresponding set of permissions for accessing specific environments, and so on. Some roles are available by default, but you're actually able to create any role, any custom role that you want. And you're able to specify, for example, in the prod Asia environment for these specific secrets, people are only able to maybe create new secrets, but they can't view or modify or delete the existing ones. So, yeah, they very, again, very, very highly customizable roles. You can manage roles or project members or environments or service tokens with them. And yeah, make sure that people have the right set of permissions or machines.
Nice.
Yeah, I know you were also like you. I think you had some kind of like suggestions about more like attribute based access controls, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that comes back to kind of my mono repository use case,
Yeah,
where you know, I, I I think for my situation, and I don't know how niche that is versus what you see from all your actual customers and such, but um, I think there's roles that access secrets, which I mean, you've got roles, right? But like, say a DevOps person, they're always going to need access to secrets tagged with cloud or infra or whatever. And I just figured that approach scales better for a mono repository where I don't want to have to be configuring loads of paths all the time. But
yeah, it could work. So we've been thinking about it a lot, and we're actually right now soon we will be releasing the revamp to access controls. Um, and so it's access controls as well as all the other adjacent features to it. Um, and maybe I can talk about two of them in a bit. But yes, I think there is definitely a lot of room for this kind of like tag based or attribute based access controls. There is also a lot of rules that you can And on top of that, for example, if a user is accessing secrets from a particular IP address, then they get a role X. But if they're accessing it from a different IP address or from a different network, then they get a role Y. Um, so these kind of like changing roles is also a very, very interesting concept. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I guess you've got people using this DND. I'm sure you use it yourselves, DND. Like it's like that video. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It went viral on Twitter maybe last year, and it's like the designer watching someone play with their product, and it's like the box with the star hole and the circle hole and the square hole, and they put all the shapes in the one hole, and they're like, I
Yeah.
just need something with that. And it's like, when you have an open source project, the people are always going to find weird and wonderful ways to use it. So it's just nice and refreshing when people take on board ideas and talk about them. So yeah, I'm excited
Yeah.
to see what he's come up with.
No, it's gonna be very cool. So one thing that we also already have is something called secret approvals. I don't know if you had a look into that before, but
I
basically how it
haven't
works
though.
is, so you see we are right now in the prod US environment, and in the prod US environment there is this lock icon, and it says that it's protected by policy prod US. So now, if as an engineer, if I want to update secrets in this particular environment, it actually won't process my change. Instead, it will work similar to how you commit or raise a PR in Git. So before merging your code to main, it has to be approved by one or multiple other people on your team. And we have the similar concept with secrets. Before you merge your changes into the production environments, it has to be approved by one of the admins on the team that you pre-specify, or maybe multiple admins. And here you see someone submit a request, and I'm able to approve or reject it, depending on if it makes sense or not. And these policies, they can be specified very freely. You can specify who is able to make changes for or approve changes for every particular environment, and how many approvals you need, and so on. And actually, how this feature started is one of our customers. She used to be a head of infrastructure in a very large company, and they had this error twice where they updated secret in like one of the production environments, and they made a mistake accidentally because there wasn't a second person to kind of like look over the change, and then the production went down twice. So first of all, like, this approval functionality is good for compliance and making sure that nothing goes into production that's unwanted, but also it just gives you another set of eyes to make sure that everything is stable.
Yeah, I like that pull request format for making changes. That's very cool. I'd seen the thing in the menu bar. I'd never clicked on it because I'm a team of one. So I was like, I don't know what that is. But yeah, I could
Yeah,
see how that's really going to be beneficial for larger teams that are all working
yeah, and you know what? Actually, I feel like we hear this a lot, and I think we're going to be unifying this in the larger, access control tab, which is going to be like universal, all the things around access controls in Infisical that you might need. And there is another thing, another feature that will be coming out very soon here, and it will probably be called temporary access. And how it works is, sometimes imagine you have your deployment on Tuesday, and there is a team of engineers who needs to have access to the pre-prod environments for these specific hours on this specific day. So what you're able to do within Physical is you're able to set up a schedule, or as an admin, you can just kind of like issue this temporary access. And then on this specific time, for a specific number of period of time, these specific engineers will get access to this environment. And after the access expires, you can specify for secrets to be automatically rotated.
Whoa,
So
that's cool.
yeah, yeah. So this kind of like temporary access is something that we see a lot of teams want. From the smallest teams, kind of like startups, to very large corporations as well. So yeah.
I can imagine a scenario where there's some sort of incident and developers who don't normally access production database, where there might be PII or whatever, can elevate the permissions, and then as soon as they've finished with that incident, it all gets rotated behind the scenes, and then they lose their access. That's
Yeah,
powerful,
exactly.
very powerful.
Because there are those kind of like high stakes situation where, if developers don't have access to that, then they kind of like can't do much. Um,
Or
but
they'll find
yes,
they'll find ways around it, and then they'll break the entire process. Right? You have to find a way that is allows people to do their job, but in a way that does keep security first and front and
yes,
center. Right? And I think that's really important. So, very
yeah,
very cool
exactly.
feature.
And this is one of those features around security shift left that I've been talking about, because traditionally what's happening is that, in traditional secret managers, if something like this happens, then the engineer on the or like the team that's responsible for secret management, they somehow try to find a way to give particular secrets access to these specific engineers. But then what's happening is that they somehow get a hold of those secrets, then they store them potentially in unwanted places like Slack or Notes or whatever it is. um, and it's much better to store everything in Infisical and rotate them at the right schedule. um, yeah.
Yeah, very cool feature. So I guess
Yeah.
you've mentioned now there's a few things that's coming up and you're working on and going to be deployed soon. Um, Maybe you could like what does soon mean for Infisical? Do you use release every month? Do you use release every quarter? Is it every day? Like,
So yeah, right. Maybe I can stop sharing.
oh,
Oh, sorry.
it's all right. Everybody's done that before. It's one of the most frustrating things about where that button is. So don't worry about it whatsoever.
I accidentally decided to hang up.
You're just like, I'm done
Yeah.
with this guy. I'm away. Yeah.
Yeah, at least the reconnect button was right there, so I was able to reconnect immediately when I realized what happened. But yeah, so actually, that's a really interesting question, because previously we used to be on a rolling release schedule. So we were, basically releasing features, after testing them out thoroughly as we go. Right now, we are actually moving more towards kind of like a scheduled release schedule. I think it's going to be around monthly.
Mhm.
And we're going to have kind of like a particular day every month that we are releasing features. And yeah, that's how it works. So, for example, with the feature around temporary access, I think we're going to be releasing it for around 2 weeks or so. Um, and yeah, so our team is actually moving very, very quickly. If you I don't know if you are keeping up with our development on GitHub and so on, but you can see like how many commits and PRs we're merging. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there? Are you done with the demo? Do you want me to throw more questions out, or do you want to show a few more things?
Yeah, I mean, let's continue with the demo then. Let me. Yeah. Can you see it again?
Yeah, it's back up.
Yeah, perfect. So obviously, the most important part about Infisical is how you actually access these secrets across your applications. So and with Infisical, we provide a lot of different ways. So first of all, we have the integrations, with all the different cloud and developer tools. Or let's say not all of them, but a large part of them, and certainly some of the most popular ones. And so an example for that could be Vercel, or Heroku, or GitHub Actions, or Circle CI, or anything else that you see on this dashboard, and potentially there is more in the documentation. But how it works is, for example, let's take GitHub or Vercel as an example. You can integrate Infisical with your Vercel projects, and every time you update a secret in Infisical, it will actually be propagated to these projects. So what happens is that you're able to create a central source of truth for your secrets, and make sure that there's no discrepancies for your secrets across all the different platforms, whether it's GitHub or Vercel or Supabase or any other platform that you might be using. And yeah, and what we see a lot is we see, for example, a lot of teams with like for example 100 different Heroku applications, and then they are able to centralize everything in Infisical, and in a very nice looking dashboards with all the different environments compared to each other. Yeah, have you tried creating an integration yet? I'm not sure.
I have. It's one of the main selling points for me of centralizing my secrets. The fact that I could put everything into this product and then I don't have to worry about copy and pasting into GitHub Actions or Cloudflare workers and so forth. Like, just being able to
Yeah.
hook that up and then it automatically does the sync is such a nice feature. And it encourages me to have better security posture. I'm not going for the back door of saying, well, I'm just going to store this password on my desktop because I need to for the next thing I'm deploying in 2 weeks or whatever. Like I just have confidence now that if I put them here, they're in the right place and they get to the right place. And that's very cool.
Yeah, no, exactly. And this becomes very handy, kind of like the more services you're using and the more applications you have, the more of a problem it becomes. And especially, like if you start having a larger team, then in physical integrations become very handy because you have a single source of truth and everything stays secure.
Yeah. I've also found that in some cases go the other way. Like instead of trying to sync things somewhere, like the JavaScript SDK is also so good that I'm finding that in my applications I'm actually just trying to fetch the secrets where they're
Yeah.
needed well. And then it means I only have to sync one thing to these different services, and then the apps can fetch whatever they need beyond that. It
Yeah.
does expose a little bit of risk because my tokens probably have access to too much for the application that they need. But based on the access control stuff that you're talking about and things that are going to come, that'll all get tidied up in due course. So
Yeah, and you can also, for example, restrict the IP addresses and do a lot of different things around security in this sense.
yeah, yeah, I like the
Uh,
flexibility, and it just you can tackle each of these problems in many different ways within physical. And again, it comes down to what works best for the team, what they're trying to do, and that's the approach they should be taking.
yeah, yeah. Sure. And so these are kind of like, the integrations on the cloud and all the different platform type of things. Something that's also very helpful, and it's admittedly helpful for a different set of developers, but it's a lot of different infrastructure integrations. So starting from managing your secrets in Docker to Kubernetes to Terraform to Ansible or Jenkins pipelines. It could really be anything, and it depends on how the team. Oh, sorry. I just realized that you're probably not able to see my screen
No, we can.
anymore. Right, but I switched to a different tab. Hold on, let me
Oh,
maybe. I'm not gonna hang up again. I'm just gonna stop sharing and change the tab. Um, yeah, can you see it now?
yes, we see the Terraform
Yeah.
TF.
Perfect. Yeah. No, what I was just gonna tell you, it's for example with Terraform, you're able to provision different secrets and other resources in physical. You can, for example, create a physical project and so on. So all of these automations are possible. We have multiple ways to integrate with Kubernetes. But ultimately, what they allow you to do is they allow you to kind of like stay up to date with all the latest secret versions. And as soon as you update a secret in your Infisical instance, it will actually be automatically propagated to your applications, and your applications will be redeployed. So you don't need to think about the deployment aspect yourself. And this is probably like one of, for teams that are using Kubernetes, I think this is one of the most loved features of Infisical.
Yeah, it's now one of the first things I install into my Kubernetes clusters is the operator. So
Yeah. And yeah, and another kind of like tangential thing feature is in physical agent, and basically it works similar to a sidecar, which is able to render your secrets according to a specific template. So you specify a template here, and whatever your application is, it's able to get those secrets and you don't need to change any code logic internally in your application.
Oh, I hadn't seen
And
that before, but that's pretty cool.
yeah, I guess because it's fairly new. It's probably like a couple months old. Um, yeah, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that within physical and ultimately for any secret management solution you're using, it will only be useful if it's able to integrate with, like ideally all of the tools, infrastructure, developer tools that you're using, but at least like a very very large majority of those, and which is why we take these integrations very seriously, and whatever the engineering teams out there could be using, whether it's Ansible or all the different other infrastructure tools, SimCity, GitHub Actions, GitLab, and Jenkins is a very very popular one as well. um, then they should be able to do that within physical. And they should be able to simplify secret management there. And while simplifying, they will also make it more secure, because their developers will now be, um, much more likely to use a simple solution for secret management in this particular environment.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, there is quite a lot of things that are other to Infisical. So one of the, maybe I can stop sharing at this point. One of the things that how we view Infisical, is it's a single platform for managing secrets. And what this could mean is also secret scanning functionalities. So if you are or are not familiar with secret scanning, it's a set of tools that prevents your secrets from being leaked. And one of the very common examples for that is hard coding secrets into Git. So what we do within Physical is using our CLI, we are able to prevent commits that have hard coded secrets inside them. So we have an algorithm embedded there. It runs locally on your machine, and it's able to identify any hard coded secrets, and kind of like warn you. It's like, hey, be careful, you're about to commit this to Git, and then it's going to be in your Git history, which is not a good security, um, which is not a good action to do from the security standpoint.
Yeah, so
Um,
is that algorithm detecting any secret string or secrets that you have in your physical system?
It's anything.
All
It's
right, okay.
anything. So it's able to pattern match. It's able to identify 150 different secret types, from, like different AWS access tokens to API keys and SendGrid, or whatever it is. But yes, it's kind of like able to pattern match and identify those secrets, and prevent you from leaking those. So even if the secrets are not in a physical yet, we will catch those.
Nice.
Yeah, and definitely one of the kind of like future directions as well, for expansion for Infisical. Working on the the secret scanning realm, because that's something that a lot of engineers like. You have a single solution for, that kind of like combines these functionalities together.
All right, nice. Let's kind of change pace a little bit to something we haven't really touched on yet. So we said at the start that this is all open source. So
Yeah.
there is a cloud product. People can go and sign up and just let you manage everything for them. But if they wanted to self-host, that is an option. Like, what is involved there, and how does Physical keep people from doing anything silly? What's the encryption technology under the hood? Is it using cloud KMS? Is it providing their own keys? Maybe you could shed a bit more light on that.
Yeah. So first of all, actually the self-hosting. So we provide all the self-hosting instructions within our documentation. And admittedly, we used to have very, very thorough instructions, because we very recently migrated from MongoDB to Postgres. And right now, we don't have everything kind of like on par with how it used to be for Mongo yet. But we are adding them over time. And there are kind of like a number of different architectures that we do recommend people to self-host depending on their use cases. If typically, if it's kind of like a solo project, that's one architecture that's being recommended. If it's like a huge bank, then it's a different one. And we, for example, have like a Kubernetes deployment with Helm charts available. and all the steps that people need to take to deploy and create this highly available environment. Um, and yes, and also like we provide different instructions for how to actually secure your environment. So how it works is that for well how to secure your environment, but also how to secure the data within Infisical. And we kind of like as part of our security posture, the goal of Infisical is to secure the data within Infisical. Uh, but the kind of like the part of securing the environment of Infisical is mostly on the team who is self-hosting it. So we can kind of like advise on that, but we can be responsible for that because it's ultimately the responsibility of the self-hosting team. Um, and yeah, but the setup is very simple. We actually, it's I guess it's a very interesting story because when we started out, there used to be kind of like so many different encryption keys and other things that people had to specify when they were self-hosting in Physical. And we actually narrowed it down and made it kind of like much simpler. So a lot of these things are being generated automatically now, and you just need to specify a single encryption key. And yeah, that's how it works. It's very simple.
Nice. I like simple. I like that you don't
Yeah.
have to get 6 people in 6 different countries standing underneath a solar eclipse at the same time, chanting some sort of magic phrase just to get it to boot up. So, very cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So Infisical is simple. It's not simple. It's open source. It can be simple to install. The complexity is there if you want to go to the documentations and find a setup that works for you, and people can get started right away. You've already kind of covered on what is coming up with a few things, but is there any larger or longer term initiatives that you're working on in Physical that people should be excited about that you want to go and share with them today?
Yeah, honestly, there's just so many things happening at the same time. So first of all, for the integrations that that I showed you, something that we will be releasing soon is bidirectional integrations.
Oh,
So sometimes what happens is that even though Infisical is the main source of truth for Infisical, some engineer on the team decides to, for some reason, to update the secret in Heroku. And then what happens is there becomes discrepancy. So with bidirectional integrations, you'll actually be able to specify, what's the behavior that you want to follow in case these discrepancies appear. And there's a lot of other things that we'll be releasing for improving integrations. You can kind of think of it as the integration V2 stage, and they'll become much more customizable if you want them to be customizable. But yeah, so that's another thing. The other thing that's going to be coming out, and that's what we've been working for like quite a long time now, is different authentication methods for how you can authenticate into Infisical, both on the user and on the machine level. And yeah, I mean, there is lots and lots of stuff around it. We already support, for example, on the user level, a lot of different authentication methods, starting from very simple like email and password, to SAML SSO, to OIDC, to LDAP, to all kind of like it's a lot of different things. Um, but there is much more to be added, and also a lot on the machine level. For example, Kubernetes authentication is something that
mm,
we'll be adding, and so on. Another functionality, and this is going to be kind of like another part of Infisical, and maybe it would come a little later, but ultimately it's the secret sharing functionality. And how we view it is that even though you have Infisical as your secret management platform, sometimes you have these situations where you, as a developer, have to send something confidential to either another person on your team or maybe to your clients or whatever it is. And then you would be able to use Infisical to basically generate encrypted links. And it's kind of like a secret sharing infrastructure for these sensitive credentials.
nice. Wow, based on all of those things that you have coming up, I'm assuming nobody in your team has a minute to sleep because that is a lot of
Yeah.
features that you're working on.
Yeah. We borderline don't sleep. Yeah.
All right. Well, I hope based on everything that people have seen and what they've heard is that they're excited and they're all going to go check out Physical at the next available option.
Yeah.
Any last words for people before we wrap this up?
No, thanks so much for inviting me. It was really really fun talking to you and showing in physical to everyone in your audience. And yeah, hopefully people are excited. Hopefully they like what we're building. And yeah, if you know, we also have a Slack channel. You can find it at infisical.com/slash Slack. And feel free to join. You know, if you have any questions, just let us know. We reply to those very quickly. And yeah, we'd love to have you try in physical.
Yeah. And remember, it's open source. So go to GitHub, get involved, and, make it Physical a
Yeah,
little bit better every day.
yeah, we have a huge contributor community. You know, we yeah, open source is really at the heart of physical. And yeah,
All right. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your morning to join me. I love Infisical, a product I use pretty much every day, and thank you for sharing it with everyone else. And until next time, we'll see you all soon. Thank you, Vlad.
thank you.